Hi and welcome back. This is section 1 video and we're going to get into the plenum and runners. I had previously recorded this section and the video went way longer than I wanted it to, so I'm breaking it up in 3 different sections. Here's my pieces that I work with. They're all stock, and so are the runners. They're all stock as well. The first one to the right is a stock runner, nothing's been touched. The second one is a Siamese kind of opened up runner, and here's another Siamese version, a little bit more radical. Okay, I'm going to set these guys down real quick because we're just going to talk about the stock runner the stock plenum just real quickly. Just a bit of history on this, because when I start to review this and I give you the CFM numbers, it's a little bit surprising, but that how anemic and how little airflow this guy flows. In the 80s, this was originally designed for 305 motors, and actually the 84 or 83 when the Corvette came out, they had the crossfire injection that was supposed to be for their 350. Well, that had bombed out in an emergency effort. They put this guy on there in its place, all right? But during that time, if I understand it right, history was that GM figured eventually V8s would go extinct, and the 305, they would have to go to a 305 eventually because of the gas guzzler tax and stuff like that, and emissions were becoming more difficult. I even remember that Ford announced that it maybe get rid of its Mustang and V8 and go to a V6 Pro. Well, fortunately for us, technology caught up and made things more efficient. We're not stuck with V6 motors and no power. Okay, so this piece I picked up is secondhand. Someone had already did a little bit of modification and they poured it in here. You'll see a lot of stuff out there. There's throttle bodies, different throttle bodies, 3 types. Your stock's 49 millimeter. There's a 52 and there's a 58 also available. A couple different companies making BBKs, most recognizable professional products, and Holley also make one. Talking with a guy once that changed his to, and I've actually ported these out to 58. A guy had told me that he put a 58 on his and it was relatively stock motor. He lost 0.2 of a second in his quarter-mile time. And what I've realized after working with a flow bench is that the reason why that was is when you open this up, you expanded it, you actually slow down the velocity, the airspeed. So being that this is not a high RPM motor, where you don't get up at the RPMs where that larger throttle body would make a difference with get more air in there, it actually hurt it because you don't have the RPMs that have that, and you lose air velocity speed. So 90% of your builds out there, and even on my 383, just with the 2 runners on there, I just stuck with the 49 millimeter. Okay, unless you have something that's a pretty good build, like a larger displacement 383 or something like that, and you have aftermarket runners on there that can flow more, then maybe consider 52. But even then, if you to build this motor right and stay with this configuration and not get away from this intake, I almost think 49 is probably sufficient enough. So if you do work this area, port it. It's already almost 52. You can bring it down a little bit, but not huge gains. And unfortunately, I couldn't give you numbers to this on what that did change it. But from my experience with that amount of material movement, it'd only be maybe 3 CFM, 4 CFM. So by no means do you rip this guy off and port that. It's worth your time and effort to pick up 3. If you already have it off, then fine, clean it up a little bit, but don't go too crazy with it because it's not going to give you too much. So let's go real quick over the numbers of what this guy out of the box is, and it's a bit of an eye-opener. It was for me, certainly, because a lot of people always told me and talked about the runners being the weak link, and they are, but this is also not a very efficient piece to begin with. But remember, it was designed for 305, and at that time they were looking to achieve maximum torque and keep the RPMs down and save gas mileage. So that is why they designed the system. So starting off real quick, I remember that these are in reverse order. This side comes down to 1 cylinder, and this side circles back to number 2. So starting with number 2 cylinder, flowed at 229 CFM. Number 4 flows at 232 CFM. Number 6 flows at 228 CFM. Number 8 at 219 CFM. Notice the 219 CFM. That's pretty low. And that's the lowest of them. Coming back over to the other side, the number 1, which flows at 221 CFM. Number 3 is at 233 CFM, and number 5 is at 241 CFM, which is actually your highest number, 241, which is not a lot to begin with. Number 7 would be at 230 CFM. So this guy is definitely not a big mover to begin with. Something to consider, even if you go. That's another limiting factor, even with larger aftermarket runners. That will affect that as well as far as that air movement. Okay, so I'm finished with this section. The next section, I'm going to bring the other pieces back up, and I'm going to show you. They're all stock stuff, and I'm going to show you the runners, what porting mods that I did. There's a couple different kinds, and we're going to review the numbers of all stock, and then we're going to go to a little bit more aggressive porting Siamese to the other runner, and we'll show the gains and kind of something to consider as far as your efforts go. So I would stay tuned this next section. It's a pretty good one.